Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name's Diane Donnelly, and I am with the Donnelly Group of Keller Williams Flagship of Maryland, and I run a little small team here in Annapolis. And we are at the tail end, actually, right, Tara? The tail end of a series for estate planning. And this is topic 4 of 4. And we have actually already spoken about, I wrote down a couple of things. We spoke about long-term care. We spoke about guardianships. We spoke about considerations for blended families. We spoke about estate planning myths. We talked about dying with or without a will. We talked about the difference between wills and trusts and all the estate planning components, if you will. And today we're going to talk about asset protection. And what I found interesting was that normally when I think about asset protection and asset planning, I think about financial planners. So I was really excited to talk with Tara off screen to learn about what she does in that. But I would like to introduce you. Hopefully you've been paying attention to the last couple of seminars that we've done, but if not, Tara Frame is a local real estate agent. I'm a local real estate agent. Tara is a local attorney, and she does estate planning, including wills, trusts, living wills, and power of attorneys. She does elder law, guardianships, and estate administration and probate. And Tara, welcome back again. And we appreciate you, your time, your talents, your enormous amount of information and expertise. And just fill in the gaps for us. Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I love doing these. I love, educating the public because there's so many misconceptions and misunderstandings about estate planning. I've been practicing for 26 years now, believe it or not. My dad founded the firm in 1954. We just had our 65th anniversary of the firm last year.
That's incredible.
Yeah, we have 3 attorneys in the firm, and we just love helping the community. This is an area of practice that, I've always enjoyed. I love helping people. I love having happy clients, and just developing relationships with families and their children and grandchildren over generations. So, I still represent my dad's clients from, the 1960s, 70s.
Wow.
They're coming in now as they're aging, bringing in their children and grandchildren. So it's really, satisfying to help families with these types of issues.
Well, I'll give you a kudos. I was speaking to a client, a mutual client of ours. I'm going to be helping her sell her deceased father's home here in Annapolis. And she just stepped back and she said, I could not do this without Tara and her team. I am so stressed out. I don't know where to begin. I'm out of state. This is the first time I've ever had to do it. I don't ever want to do it again. It's sad. It's scary. And I would be completely lost. And I trust Tara and her team completely, and I turned everything over to them. They told me what I needed to do. So hats off to you guys.
Yeah, well, thank you for that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So tell me, Tara, how does asset protection come into play in an estate plan?
So yeah, it's a little bit, most people don't think of asset protection when you're thinking about estate planning. But, one of the things that we're looking at is, when we're talking about asset protection, we're talking about how are we protecting these assets for people to pass a legacy down to their family, how to protect money for children with special needs, how to protect money for children who may have a history of drug abuse or substance abuse, or are just not capable of handling their own money. And then elderly people when they've worked their whole lives to accumulate what they have, to build a nest egg, and then how to pass that on to the family and avoid having to lose it all if you have to go into long-term care or a nursing home situation and basically are forced by the state to spend all of your money basically until you're sick and you're broke. Those are basically the criteria to qualify for any type of benefits for long-term care.
So let me be clear. So financial planners are going to be the folks that you go to try to build wealth. And tell me if I'm wrong here. So they help you to build wealth. You're helping them to preserve wealth and to pass it on.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So a lot of times we're working with the financial advisors. Those are my favorite kinds of cases, is where, I'm working as a team and I'm collaborating with the financial advisor, the tax advisor, and me as the estate planning attorney, to make sure we're all on the same page, we're all on board, we're all moving in the same direction, and we're all looking out for our clients' mutual best interest. And there's just different pieces of the puzzle, and when we can make all those pieces come together, it's just a great situation when we can make sure a client is protected all the way around.
I love that. And it's not different than, I'll use an elderly person as an example, but they've got a complication with their heart, but they also have diabetes, and they have other extenuating circumstances that make just the heart problem one component. So if you talk to the cardiologist and then they're speaking to the neurologist for the other problem, and everybody is on a team, it's not different. It's just you're talking about all of the circumstances that people have, financial circumstances that they have, what could go wrong, how to protect that, what are their special interests. So what is a special needs trust, speaking of which?
Okay. So yeah, a special needs trust is a special kind of trust when we're dealing with someone who may be currently receiving government benefits such as SSI, which is supplemental security income, Medicaid, medical assistance, Section 8 housing, something like that, where they're reliant on these benefits. So if you have, a child who is born with a brain injury, or you have an autistic child that's not ever going to become self-supporting, you have, various medical conditions where they're not going to be able to support themselves. If, I had a grandparent the other day, and they think, sometimes these grandparents or parents think they're doing a really nice thing by leaving an inheritance to these children or grandchildren. And I have to explain to them that if they do that, yes, I mean, that is a great thing to do. But if they do that, they're going to cause that child to lose all eligibility for government benefits. Mm-hmm. We don't want that at all, because sometimes, losing the coverage for medical assistance and healthcare can be devastating, especially if you have someone who has serious medical problems and they're reliant on that healthcare
for the rest of their lives too. You're taking a benefit that they need for the rest of their lives for perhaps a short-term influx of money, right?
Right. So what happens? They lose the eligibility until all of that money is spent down. So if it's $100,000 they've received, they have to spend down, all but $2,500 before they can become eligible again. Oh. So what's the point of saving all that money just to, basically give it back to the government and put your heir or your beneficiary in that situation? So what we can do, and these are all by IRS statute and Maryland regulatory provisions, that special needs trusts can be created, which basically put the money for that person, that special needs person, into a trust. The trustee for that person can use the money for education, transportation, buy a car, renovations to make the house handicap accessible, co-pays, entertainment, haircuts, all these other things that Medicaid would not cover. So basically anything but food and shelter can be used, that the money can be used for these incidental items, and it doesn't affect the person's eligibility for benefits. So it's a really important part. A lot of my wills, I build it in just as a contingent provision. Even if somebody doesn't need it, you never know if somebody is going to, drive down the road, have a catastrophic accident, and come out with a brain injury, and all of a sudden they're on, they might need these benefits. So we try to always have a contingency plan. But if a family does have a person who has special needs, we have to put those provisions in a trust or a will to make sure that that person is going to be protected, and the money is going to go for their care, not just paid right back to the government.
I'm almost certain this is the trust that we did. So I had a client who was selling his mom's home, he and his mom, I think. Maybe it was just in the mom's name. And he was in a nursing home. He was a young man, but he had complications, and he was in a nursing home and would be for the rest of his life. And the equity, when they sold the home, there was too much equity that, because he was reliant on state money, they had to put it into the equity into a special needs trust to protect his medical, the dollars that he's receiving from the state.
Yep.
So isn't that probably what that was?
Exactly. That's exactly what that was.
Okay. Yeah, I thought I remembered that correctly. What about, tell me about passing money in trust to beneficiaries. How does that work?
So another form of asset protection is, in most people have a will and are familiar with a will. And when you die, that will gets recorded with the county, and the courthouse, and you have to go through the process, the legal process of conveying all those assets to beneficiaries. That's called the probate process. When that process is finished, the court approves distribution to the beneficiaries. Most of the time, the will is just going to make an outright distribution, meaning there's no contingencies, there's no conditions. The money is, a check is written from the estate and it's given to the beneficiary and they go on their merry way. I have clients, who have maybe one child. I mean, this happens all the time. They have one child who, is a CPA, she's very well educated, she's stable, she can handle money. Then there's the other child who, has gone through 2 bankruptcies, has been divorced once, kind of lost everything in the first divorce and through several bankruptcies, maybe has a, alcohol problem. They're not going to, they don't want to leave $100, $200, $300,000 to this person because it's going to be gone. So what we can do is we can pass that money in trust to that beneficiary and make someone else a trustee. Or maybe a bank can be a trustee, a relative, a close friend, a fiduciary. Somebody can be a trustee and make either, they could say, well, he's going to be given $1,000 a month for the rest of his life or until this money's gone, or so much, for these specific, areas of need. My trustee is directed to pay his rent and utilities and car payment, forever, but that's all the trust money's for. It can be used for education, so solely for education up to a certain age, and then that child can get access, when they're 25 or 30. So there's lots of things we can do, and basically the person who's creating these trusts controls their money from the grave. In effect, they could be long gone, but they're still directing how this money is to be used and distributed among their beneficiaries, whether it's children, grandchildren, might even go down to great grandchildren, if that's what we want to do. So, and all money that passes to beneficiaries in trust, as long as that money is kept in trust and it's retained in the trust, it is protected from future divorce, bankruptcy, creditors, judgments. So a scenario that happens all the time is when people leave, let's say you leave a child, it's an only child, she gets everything. It's $1 million. She takes that $1 million. She has a check because it's been given to her from the estate. She then pays off the joint house with husband, takes the other $500,000, puts it into a joint investment account with husband. She's now commingled all that money with the marital funds, and then the husband runs off with the neighbor and files for divorce. Going to get 50% of all of that money because she's commingled it with marital funds and she hasn't protected it, or her parents haven't protected it for her. So had that money been passed to her in trust, and she just took what she needed along the way, all of the money that was retained in trust, the husband would not get 1 penny of that money.
Wow. I mean, I just in the past 4, 6, 8 weeks that we've been doing these webinars, it seems so clear to me to do trusts. Like, it just seems there's so much more flexibility if you have a trust than not.
I mean, we can do a lot more. We have a lot more control, a lot more creativity. And and like I said, you can control it from the grave, as opposed to when you have a will and it goes through probate and it's distributed. Most of the time it's just distributed and, the estate's closed and that's it. Not everyone needs a trust. I mean, there are some attorneys who will, try to push trusts on everyone, but trusts and other, if you read online, you say, oh, you need a trust. not everyone needs a trust, but if there's certain scenarios where you have the issues where you're concerned about a son-in-law or daughter-in-law, or you're concerned about a child not being able to handle money, or you just want to have that control after you're gone, um, or maybe take care of a child for the rest of their life. And then when they pass away, that money is going to be passed on to grandchildren for educational purposes. So leaving legacies. So it depends on the goals and objectives. I have clients who say, you know what, I just want everything distributed to my kids, and whatever they do with it, that's fine. I'm going to be dead and gone. And that's up to them. They can make their own mistakes or not.
Right.
Make distribution, and that's fine. It just depends on what your objectives are and really what you want to accomplish. So it comes down to the family and the personalities and the financial situation. So it's just unique in every circumstance. Every family is different.
Yeah. And every circumstance, like there's some that have it's a husband and wife. It's very simple. They've got one kid. That's it. Pretty easy. But if there's anything that's complicated or can become complicated, because it might be easy now and then get more complicated later. But I think the most important thing is to think through, or to have an attorney that's experienced to think through with you what could go wrong. And if that does go wrong, or let's prevent it from even getting to that point, and keep the family harmony, that there's not the option to go the wrong direction, right? To keep the trust will protect that.
Yeah, and just having that peace of mind, knowing that things are going to work out the way you are intending them to work out, as opposed to just kind of throwing it out there and hoping that it works out, or leaving it to chance. One of the other the webinars we gave, we talked about blended families. That's another scenario where, it happens quite often, where, husband and wife just have mirror wills. When I die, it goes to husband. When husband dies, it goes to wife. But then what happens when the wife remarries and then either has new children or has stepchildren? And then let's say she leaves everything to the new husband when she dies, then the new husband has everything and it's going to go to his children. It might, the original children of the couple might get zero.
Which was not the intent of the husband to begin with.
Right. And it's not that they intend for this to happen. It's that they just don't have the information to think through the scenarios, and I don't expect them to. I mean, they're not lawyers. That's my job. So it's important to go through these scenarios and say, sometimes I feel like a negative Nancy, because I'm like, well, what about this happens, and what if this happens? I haven't thought about that. I said, well, that's what you're here for. This is what we're going to talk about, because we have to talk through these scenarios and figure out, okay, if we're going to go down this path, how do you see it? How do you want it to work out?
Yeah.
And if it happens in this way, how do you want it to work out? So that's my job as an attorney, is to really create and craft the estate plan to make sure what they want to happen actually happens.
When you are paying an estate attorney a couple $1,000s to do a trust or whatever your estate plan is, that is just, you are paying for peace of mind. To me, when I'm making my decisions, my financial decisions, and I'm thinking of asset protection and estate planning stuff, I'm thinking, I just want what I want carried out without complication. That's what I'm paying a couple $1,000s for. And that does not seem, in the grand scheme of things, that's not a lot of money.
Right. I mean,
it feels like it when you have to, cut that check, it feels like it. But when you think about the alternatives and the consequences of not doing that, it's a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, I mean, it costs less than the cost of a weekend getaway. You could have, yourself while you're still alive. You want to protect yourself, and then protect your family for everything that you've worked so hard, for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years to get to where you are. So, you're right.
That brings me to another question about as we age. Tell me about like Medicaid and estate recovery.
So if a person is, basically you need to be sick and broke before Medicaid would kick in. So you have to be disabled and not be able to care for yourself. And then they require you to spend all of your money. Basically, you can't have more than $2,500 in cash or investments. So there's strategies that we can use to protect that money for, again, the benefit of the elderly person, and still have them qualify for Medicaid benefits, so that the Medicaid will cover the cost of the nursing home care. Um, because what happens is, a lot of times, if the families spend every dime that they have and then apply to get benefits, what's going to happen? Who's going to pay for, grandma's haircuts? To maybe she wants to get her nails done. Maybe she's always done that her whole life. Maybe they want to, she wants to go to lunch once a week. Maybe, she has other copays. Other things that they, transportation to get her to and from doctor's appointments. All these things that cost money that people don't really think about until the time comes.
Mm-hmm.
And then it ends up, the family, and I hate to use the word burden, but they are burdened with these expenses out of their own pockets.
Mm-hmm.
And they're having to come up with the money somehow. And maybe they
Right.
don't have, all this, extra money lying around to pay for that, because they're just trying to pay their own bills. If, and there are ways, if people try to plan ahead of time as much as possible to protect at least some of that money. I mean, we can protect at least 50% to 100% of people's assets to provide and pay for all of these expenses as people age and need extra care. And then when the person dies, theoretically, there's going to be some to pass on to the family, not, if we're able to protect it in a timely manner.
Okay. So if you have a child and they make bad decisions, they've unfortunately been through tough times, they've gone through a divorce, they've gone through bankruptcy, they've had some judgments, etc. Can you protect the assets for those children? Is it just through the trust that you were explaining earlier? Is there anything different than that?
Yeah, that's generally the way, that's the best way to do it, is through a trust. And then you put, appropriate conditions and distribution instructions in the trust as to how the money can be used, when it can be used, when it can be distributed, for what purposes. So those are all, discussions that I have with my clients. And that's sometimes the hardest
I'm sorry.
piece, to pick the right person for that role, to
Mm-hmm.
manage and maintain the monies for the benefit of that child that makes bad decisions.
So like, could you say in a trust, could you say, I want my son to have this when he's been clean and sober for 2 years?
Sure. Yeah.
Really? So you can break provisions down however you want.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And
Hmm.
then, sometimes I have people, they don't want to necessarily give a family home to one of the children, but if maybe for a disabled child or a child who has issues, maybe like not self-supporting, you can direct that the child has the ability to live in the property for the rest of his or her life. And then upon their death, then the property gets sold and then distributed among the remaining children at that point in time. I have, various scenarios about, using that type of condition. But yeah, you can put, I have people who create pet trusts. I mean, sometimes I have people who don't have children and their children are their pets. So I've put $250,000 into a pet trust to take care of pets for the rest of that lifetime.
Wow.
And then when the last pet dies, then the money, in one, it was distributed to charities, various charities. And in another, then it was distributed to various extended family members. But,
Wow.
you can do all kinds of things with a trust.
I love that.
That's the fun part.
That is the fun part. And that's all problem solving and finding solutions. And
Yeah.
I would love to do that. If you
Yeah.
ever need help, you let me know. Would you, Tara? Give me a call.
I'm a nerd that way. I find that fun. So
I would too. What about taxes? Taxes is a big one. How do you avoid estate taxes through estate protection planning?
yeah, so back in the day, even what was it, like maybe 10 years ago, I believe the estate tax limits were $1 million. So there was a lot of tax planning going on, because if you were over $1 million, everything over $1 million basically got taxed at a 40% tax rate. Now the limits are pretty high. So it's 5 million per person in Maryland, and federal is, I think it's 11.52 now. Depending on what happens with the election, I think in 2026, the federal is supposed to sunset and it's going to come down again.
2026, you said?
Yes, I think that's the sunset time limit for this current tax. Depends on what happens with this election, but I'm pretty sure it's going to come down. So I think most people are looking at $5 to $6 million for both state and federal tax exemption. But you know, when you put together your house, all of your investment accounts, your life insurance benefits, maybe, you know, you want to make sure that you plan it appropriately. So there are definitely ways that we can take advantage of the trusts, different trusts, to protect that money from estate taxes and pass it on to children without being subject to, you know, sometimes 40, almost 50% estate tax of anything over and above those exemptions.
So let's break that down for a second. So somebody has a $7 million property or estate, and they are leaving it, and there's a $5 million exemption, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a $2 million delta there.
Right.
Is that $2 million taxed at 40%? Is that when we're talking about these estate tax limits? Is that what we're talking about, the delta between?
Yeah.
Okay. So that $2 million extra would be taxed at 40%.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's painful.
Yeah.
I don't think I have to worry about that anytime soon.
I know. I wish we had that problem.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so we can use trust to, in certain situations like that, to you know, protect it from and save estate taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to be done a certain way, so it's important. And that's why I also, like I said, I like to work with the tax advisors to make sure that that person's you know, tax situation, that we're all on the same page, because sometimes the tax advisor has a certain plan. A financial advisor is trying to plan for now while you're living. You know, a estate planner is trying to plan for the money after you're gone. So again, with all of those people working together, you know, I love it when we just come, you know, we end up with a really good final result that takes care of all of those different aspects, and we know it's all going to work to the benefit of our client and their family.
Yeah, well, you do great work, so we all appreciate it. Is there anything that we haven't talked about, Tara, today that we should be for the scope of this call?
Yeah, just, you know, I like to tell people, just, you know, it's not a scary process. It's not really hard. It shouldn't be that confusing if you're working with someone who's explaining it to you, you know, in layperson terms. So, you know, everyone should just get at least a basic estate plan to make sure that you're protected. You know, you need powers of attorney, financial and medical, and just pre-plan. Don't wait until the last minute, because it just stinks when people call when it's too late and they're looking for me to help them, and there's nothing I can do because we're dealing with either incompetence issues or dementia, Alzheimer's, and then we're trying to jump through 50 other hoops to try to get to the same place that we could have done with, like you said, you know, a couple $1,000 estate plan in the beginning. So just pre-plan.
And you can't do it soon enough. You know, I was talking to, or through Facebook, communicating with another realtor, and his mom passed away from COVID, and his uncle passed away 1 month or 2 months to the day that his mom passed away. Oh, no. And his other uncle now has it and is on a ventilator. Oh. So, you know, this series that we started here is because of that, is because people don't think about, let me do estate planning when they're 45, when they're 55, when they're 60, when some of these people that I know are passing away now. So it's become my passion to really try to help people to build wealth, preserve wealth, plan ahead, get their estate plans in order, because of so much that has changed and opened my eyes since COVID started about things can go like that. You could lose your job overnight. Half of your income is gone overnight. You get sick overnight. perfectly healthy people on a ventilator. So things can change so quickly. So it's become my passion, which is why I appreciate you coming out so much, Tara, and talking to us, because there's so many details and so many circumstances that people may not think through. So I just, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for coming out and doing this with us. I know how busy you are. And I hope that even though the series is ending, you will continue to come on and give us more information as things change and, as you feel fit, that things need to be talked about. So thank you.
Oh yeah, anytime. And if anybody needs any information, we have a lot of free information and guidance on our website at www.frameandframe.com. And we have a bunch of guides and checklists to kind of help you figure out what you don't have, what you need, and kind of start that process. So I would urge everybody to go check it out. And like I said, it's free downloads, and hopefully, if there's something you need, give us a call. We'd be happy to help out.
That's awesome. And we're going to put the information below this video. And also, if you go to the Donnelly group of Annapolis, our YouTube video, and I think you have them too on yours, they'll be, the whole series will be out there for you, for the audience to view. And next month, we're going to be talking about first-time home buyers and different programs that are available, ways to save money, different ways to negotiate, to, because we're in a seller's market right now, it's difficult on buyers. So we're going to talk about ways to help you to win the deal. So that'll be the next 4 weeks. And we look forward to seeing you again in the near future. If you guys think that this is helpful, or you find that this information would be valuable, I would just ask that you share it on your page as well, to get the word out, to help us to do planning instead of reacting. Okay. Thank you, Tara. I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon.